It's Sunday, so it must be time for Doctor Who. Alas, Series 11 is over, so what I thought I'd do is kind of do an overview of the series this week, because there's no reaction to be had of a new episode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through some of the main points of the series that I think are worth talking about. I'm not going to go through it episode by episode. I've already done that, and you can see that on a special playlist that I've created. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you can help me on Patreon, that'd be fantastic too. First of all, I want to talk about the style of the show. I think like the opening titles and the closing titles are really good. I think there's some real nods to the past with the style of the show in terms of the titles and the incidental music. The incidental music, I think, has been fantastic. The Murray Gold era is truly over, and the Murray Gold era gave us music that really kind of set the tone for each scene. And there's quite a few times in episodes where Murray Gold's music was in them where you would know, you know, whether we were supposed to feel as though the drama was heightened, or whether it was a somber moment, or whether it was a romantic moment, or whatever. The music this year has been very different, and it's been toned down, and I think it's been a little bit flatter, and that has produced a series where the action doesn't rise and fall quite in the same way. And that's been coupled with a few other stylistic changes, which I'm going to come on to when I talk about the companions, because the way the companions have been used this year has been very different, so I'll pick that up a little bit later. But I think overall it sounded really wonderful, and I think the cinematography has been fantastic. It looked great. The sets have been good overall. I'm not that keen on the TARDIS interior, and I won't be until it looks like something from the classic series. That's just the kind of guy I am. But overall, I think the style of the show has been a real success. I think this is one of the biggest changes in Doctor Who's history. I don't think it's quite the same as going from Patrick Troughton to Jon Pertwee, where suddenly it was from black and white to colour, and you had the whole unit stuff starting. I think it's more like the final year of Tom Baker's tenure as the Doctor, where you had an incoming producer with fresh ideas, new music, new titles, a completely different look and feel to the show. And that was a success, at least to begin with. The John Nathan Turner era started off really, really well. And I'm going to be doing some reviews of that series soon as well. So I think it's been a big change. It's certainly the biggest change since the programme came back in 2005. So I can understand that viewers might have found it a little bit disconcerting. But what we have to remember is that for all of the disconcerted people who are growing up and growing out of the show, as people do, unlike people like myself who just carry on rigidly watching it, there's going to be new fans coming along. There's going to be people for which this Doctor is the Doctor, not those old guys from the past. And so this series of Doctor Who is producing new fans. So the Doctor, I thought was we've got a really interesting portrayal by Jodie Whittaker. Quite vulnerable at times, not with all of the answers, and I like that. The Doctor can be a little bit arrogant. It's nice when the Doctor comes across things they've not come across before and they don't know the answers. But there's equally lots of nods to the past as well, and Jodie seems to be, you know, comfortable with either. And I think some of the main problems with the character is although there's a vulnerability, there's also an arrogance that she's always doing the right thing, and I think that's been problematic for me and quite a few viewers, is the fact that she's made some quite bizarre decisions, or she's not followed up on things that we might have expected doctors to follow up on. For example, the guy getting zapped to the past in Rosa, the Trump-like character in Arachnids, who basically just got away with you know, being a bit gun happy The resolution of that story was very odd. It seemed to be that these spiders were going to just die out and starve, and that was the resolution, that the spiders all die, and there's no, and she's just quite happy to let them starve to death, and that's better than actually killing them. There's a real moral ambiguity in some of the decisions that she's taken, and a mistake, I think, in the writing of the show, that these things weren't explored more. Well, she's quite determined at times, and I think overall a really good portrayal, and I think it's a portrayal that will really appeal to a lot of kids as well. I think the series has been aimed at a younger age group, I think, and some of the stories have been a little bit simplistic, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think some of the stories over the last few years have been very, very complex and ridiculously complicated. All the timey-wimey stuff has been utterly ridiculous, and I'm glad that we've got away from that. We've got through to proper storytelling, even if it's been flawed at times. It's proper, linear, structured storytelling. I mean, but then again, I mean, you know, the Takes You Away episode kind of was a bit more incomprehensible, and actually that was a really strong episode. I thought that was a really good episode where it explored in a fairy tale way some really interesting ideas. And Stephen Moffat always said that he wanted Doctor Who to be a kind of fairy tale, have a fairy tale feel to it, and that's what he tried to introduce. Well, I think this series has blown that out of the water with that one episode. A really, really good, strong fairy tale episode. The Companions. This is the biggest change for Doctor Who in 2018, is the way that the Companions are used. There's 3 of them, which is too many. There's been very little actually for Yaz to do. It's really been, when it's been about the Companions, apart from, you know, going to Yaz's house in Arachnids and then going to the Partition of India episode. And when it's been about the Companions, it's been about Graham and Ryan's relationship, really. So there's been not really enough for all 3 of them to do in each episode, I feel. But the really strange thing about this series, and it's the first time ever in Doctor Who's history, is that we haven't had storylines which revolve around the idea of the companion being in peril. All the way through Doctor Who's history, up until now, Doctor Who has basically had stories where the plot is driven by what the companions do in getting themselves into trouble, getting themselves kidnapped, locked up, threatened with torture, hypnotised, drugged, you name it. The companions have been through it all. Not this time. The Doctor doesn't come to the rescue of the companions. That's not what Doctor Who is about this year. This is a fundamental change, and I think this fundamental change is the thing that people have been trying to grapple with when they've been trying to criticise the series. So the companions not getting into peril changes the dynamic of the entire show. It changes the dynamic of each episode. The TARDIS team is now a problem-solving group. They encounter a problem, and the episode is about the steps that they take to resolve that problem. You could say that Doctor Who's always been like that, but you take the peril out of it and it changes the dynamic. The peril to the companions isn't there anymore. So how does that make us feel? Do we feel that the threat isn't there anymore? If you then add to that the fact that there's a lack of an alien menace in a lot of the episodes, that there's a lack of a threat of invasion in a lot of the episodes, which we've become used to as well. And what you find is that you've got a story which has quite a flat structure, and it is really just about the problem solving. Yes, there is peril, but it's not because the companions have got split up and one of them's got captured, or one of them has got drugged, or one of them is hypnotised and is trying to hurt the others. It's a completely different dynamic, and that goes along with the music, which I mentioned earlier. The music has quite a flat structure as well, and it would do, because the perils aren't the same. The perils aren't those emotional perils that someone is in danger. They are much more emotional when they happen, but even then the music is keyed down quite a lot. So it's a very interesting issue, and it's something that people are only just beginning to kind of realise, that the companion dynamic is what's changed in Doctor Who this year, and how that is going to play out in the future is going to be really interesting. Can it carry on having that kind of structure, because it is very different, and it's obviously a choice that the production team have made. This isn't about people getting into danger and then screaming their way out of it, or the Doctor coming in to rescue them. That's not what the show is anymore. The historical stories have been absolutely brilliant this series, and like I said, I'm not going to go through this episode by episode, but Rosa, the Witchfinders, and the Demons of the Punjab, 3 absolutely brilliant episodes. Without, I mean, obviously you had the Witchfinders with the alien mud thing, but the other 2 stories didn't really have an alien menace, a threat of invasion, and so on. They were very, very different, and I thought that worked really well. It was a return to the historicals as historicals, and that harks back to 1964, really. It goes right back, 1963 even, actually, although the less said about the Tribe of Gum, the better, I think. So I think the historicals were a real highlight this year. I hope we get some more in the next series, whenever that turns up, however long it is, because it's been an experiment worth doing, and it takes Doctor Who back to its roots, but it also progresses it, because they haven't been simplistic historicals. They have had, in Rosa you had the time meddling character, and you had those demons in the Punjab. But I think we've had some plot holes this year. I don't think it's been perfect. I think I've mentioned some of them already, like some of these in the early part of the series, some particularly men just getting away with being horrible, and you don't see them again, although we did see Tim Shaw at the end. There's been a few plot holes, and it's been kind of a little bit it's felt like there's something missing in every episode, and I think some of that is just down to the plotting, and the mood of the series is very different. I think it's going to take us a while to get used to this. It's a shame that it's only 10 episodes long, because could have done with being longer, but I think we're in the Netflix kind of generation, and a lot of their series are 10 episodes, so I think that's why they've made that decision. In a way, I think some of the episodes could have been longer as well. Maybe if they'd moved to an hour format, we might have got some of the resolutions done a little bit better. That would have been helpful. So before I come up with my verdict for the series, I want to just run through like my top 10 highlights, and you can see whether you can guess whether I'm joking about some of these or not. It's up to you. So here we go, not in any particular order. That Talking Frog, The Pating, Tim Shaw, James I, Bradley Walsh's wig line. I couldn't stop looking for it in every single episode, and sometimes it's really obvious. Rosa, one of the best episodes of Doctor Who ever. The music. American white boys whinging about political correctness. That Talking Frog, again. And of course Jodie Whittaker, the Doctor. So to sum it up, all I'm really going to say about Series 11 is that it's a very, very different series of Doctor Who. It isn't the best series of Doctor Who ever. It definitely isn't the worst. The viewing figures have been maintained quite well. I think it's been largely well received. I think it's a good time to be a Doctor Who fan. I think this series has been so much better than the vast majority of the Stephen Moffat era, and I just hope it comes back and comes back as good as it's been, or if not better, because it'd be nice for them to start to iron out some of the problems that they've had, and maybe longer episodes, sort out the dynamic between the companions in terms of how many there are and what they have to do. and get some of the plots resolved in a more satisfying way. But you know, overall, I think it's been really good fun.